It has come to my attention that some members in the gallery are, whenever an aye or nays called, they're repeating the ayes and nays, and that's good. You're having a lesson in parliamentary procedure, and thank you very much for your participation, but please have the respect for the members who are speaking. Thank you very much. And Representative Haitian, will you please take your seat? Thank you very much. Okay, we're on amendment number 29. Representative Haar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer floor amendment number 29 for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clerk, have copies been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Copies of floor amendment number 29 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. Representative Hall, for your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of floor amendment number 29.
Thank you. Representative Marcus Oshiro.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. Discussion, Representative Haar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, again, I offer this friendly floor amendment number 29. I would direct the members' attention to page 6 of Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, the religious exemption language. I want to thank the Chair of Judiciary for inserting this language, and he's made it very clear that he does not believe that this new language interferes with our public accommodations law. So when you read the language, it clearly states on page 6, lines 8 through 15, 572E, religious organizations, exemption under certain circumstances. Notwithstanding any law to the contrary. So notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, a religious organization or nonprofit organization operated, supervised, or controlled by a religious organization shall not be required to provide goods, services, or its facilities or grounds for the solemnization or celebration of a marriage that is in violation of its religious beliefs or faith. Mr. Speaker, we have had intense debate ad nauseum regarding the public accommodation language. And, you know, I've talked to my esteemed colleague, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and he, in fact, continues to contend that this notwithstanding any other law to the contrary is what essentially exempts the churches from public accommodations. Mr. Speaker, I would have to respectfully disagree, because if you turn to page 9 of the Standing Committee report, it clearly states under the findings and intent. And for those of you watching us on Capitol TV, the committee report is what will forever go into history as our legislative intent, should this bill ever go before a court for judicial review. And it clearly states here on page 9, it is your committee's intent that the religious exemptions contained in this measure shall not alter Hawaii's long-standing prohibition against discrimination by places of public accommodation, except to the limited extent specified in this measure and in the limited context of solemnization or celebration of a marriage or civil union. Mr. Speaker, throughout the 57+ hours of testimony that we received, many of those from the faith-based community talked about the fact that by their very nature, they are public accommodations. And as such, they had grave concerns because they understood that regardless of whatever exemption we put into this bill, they could still be subjected to Chapter 489, which is a civil rights statute. And so while, you know, I want to thank the Judiciary Chair for this language that says notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, because in the bill itself it makes it clear that if there is a public accommodations issue, the bill trumps. However, if you go to the Standing Committee report, that conflicts. The Standing Committee report makes clear that public accommodations trump exemptions. I think we have a problem here, Mr. Speaker. Again, one of the things I advocated for in the 57+ hour hearing was to have an explicit carve-out so that we would not, in fact, have this bill go before the judiciary for judicial review. The fact of the matter is, based on the conflicting language in the Standing Committee report, as well as in the bill, there is a conflict. And so if the court finds a conflict, it would then have to go to the committee report. And what the committee report is advocating for is that Chapter 489 trumps or supersedes First Amendment under the U.S. Constitution. Is that constitutional? I would submit that it is not. And so, Mr. Speaker, I do have some, again, very serious concerns about Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, and accordingly, I'm making these friendly amendments to ensure that we do not have issues, whether it's for our faith-based community. Again, it's about balancing First Amendment and 14th Amendment, and which is why I don't believe this bill achieves that objective, which is why I'm offering these friendly floor amendments. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the amended language. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Ha. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support of this amendment, Floor Amendment 29.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, during those long hearings, we heard from former judge and now Pastor Ahu, and he clearly explained to everybody in the room as well as the committee, we need to have bright lines. We don't want to end up in the courts. And many people understood this public accommodation law. And I think this is something that can help resolve the issues that we have been hearing and make it clear and bright for our organizations that practice their deep beliefs. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is very doable for everybody at this point in time. And I would consider the body to really look at this. It would greatly help the two sides. May I ask for written comments to place into the journal in support?
So ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition, and I'll be very brief.
Please proceed.
While I don't agree with the floor amendment being proposed, the idea of it, I think subsection C on its face goes well beyond an explicit carve-out for public accommodation, and in fact gives absolute immunity to religious organizations or nonprofit organizations from any civil claim. Mr. Speaker, the state and the federal government don't even have absolute immunity from any civil claim or cause of action. So for that reason, I oppose this floor amendment.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Rhodes.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition.
Please proceed.
With regard to the question about the committee report, if you read the whole sentence, it is your committee's intent that the religious exemptions contained in this measure shall not alter Hawaii's longstanding prohibition against discrimination by places of public accommodation, except to the limited extent specified in this measure and in the limited context of solemnization or celebration of a marriage or a civil union. Perfectly consistent with the underlying language, and it's a clear overriding of the public accommodations law. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Representative. For the discussion, yes, Representative Ward.
Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment.
Please proceed.
Speaker, precisely because of the uncertainty of the language in answer to the questions to Attorney General Louis, to Mr. Hoshijo of the Civil Rights Commission, this amendment is very, very necessary. Otherwise, we're just going to have a court case back and forth. It's going to be ping pong in the courts. That is not the intent of legislation that's meant to keep a community with rights, benefits, and a religious community which has had 237 years of First Amendment rights. The less clear, the more litigation. Mr. Speaker, I think we can do better if this gives us a chance to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Ha, will you give the last rebuttal?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Still in support of the floor amendment, the amended language. Mr. Speaker, I would like to note that there are 15 jurisdictions in the United States of America that have legalized same-sex marriage, 14 states and the District of Columbia. Of the 14 states that have legalized same-sex marriage, 11 states have passed it through legislatures. As we know, Illinois was the most recent. Mr. Speaker, of those 11 states, 10 states exempt religious organizations from public accommodations. 10 states. So 10 legislatures explicitly acknowledged that religious organizations would be exempt from accommodations. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I would go, these are not Bible Belt states. Again, we're talking about Vermont, Connecticut, New York, Maryland. I mean, these are not the Bible Belt states. These are very progressive states, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, I would submit, again, I mentioned this the night in the hearing, the day when we were voting out this bill in the Judiciary and Finance Committees. The state of Washington The state of Washington, which is considered the third most atheist state in the United States of America, a state that has legalized pakalolo, smoking marijuana as long as you're over the age of 21. They too have a public accommodation statute. They have a civil rights statute. And they expressly carved out in their same-sex marriage bill that no religious organization could be held liable, could be held accountable for a civil claim, a cause of action, or any state action based on that public accommodations law. The state of Washington even has that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I submit that the language in Senate Bill 1, House Draft 1, looks nothing like the other states that have passed same-sex marriage. And yet we talk about modeling our exemption after Connecticut. This language is not modeled after Connecticut. Connecticut does include an exemption for accommodations. So again, Mr. Speaker, respectfully, I offer this friendly floor amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Mr. Speaker?
Before we go on to you, I am going to call on those for insertions. Do you want to insert something in, or
Yes,
you wish
Mr.
to speak?
Speaker, I wish for permission to have the words of the representative from Kapolei to be inserted in the journal as my own, and also
So
if
ordered.
I may have permission to insert my own comments.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Psyche.
Mr. Speaker, I call for the question.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to call for the question. Before we go and call for the question, you'll have an opportunity for insertion of comments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On my left, before we get into that, I'm going from the left to the middle to the right, if you don't mind. On the left, anyone want to insert comment? Representative Ha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I request permission to enter additional written comments into the journal?
So ordered.
Thank you.
And Representative Tokyo-Oka.
With reservations and written comments. Thank you.
So ordered.
Because of the underlying bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered, Representative. Anyone else on my left? In the middle, anyone wish to speak? Representative Awana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support, written comments requesting the words of the good representative from Kapolei to be entered into the journal as if they were my own, and also ask permission to include additional comments. Thank you,
So
Mr.
ordered.
Speaker.
Representative Marcos Oshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the record reflect the words of the representative from Kapolei as my own. Also, permission to insert written comments.
So ordered, Representative.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the middle wish to insert comment? On my right, anyone else? Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, written comments permission, as well as copying the comments from the representative from Kapolei.
So ordered. Okay. And Speaker say?
In support with the words of the representative from Kapolei as though they were my own.
So ordered,
Thank you.
Representative. Representative Foley.
Mr. Speaker, same request.
So ordered. And Representative Woolley.
Written comments in opposition.
So ordered. Anyone else on my right to have written comments inserted? If not, then we're going to be calling for the motion to cease debate. All those in favor to cease debate signify by saying aye. Aye. Are those opposed? Okay, you just made it. The debate is ceased. And now, we're going to number 29 now, Amendment 29. All those in favor of Amendment number 29 signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. So the amendment fails. And members, we're going now to the main motion, but I'm going to take a short break. Let you rest a little bit until we come back. A five-minute break.